3, 2, 1.
Ooh.
Not bad.
On my side, that was all perfectly in sync.
No, it never is for me.
About 5 minutes late.
Yours is going off in a minute. So this week, you laughed as I went.
Sorry, buddy.
Welcome to the Honest Designers Show, your transparent look into life as a modern designer. My name's Tom Ross, and I'm the founder at designcuts.com. And this week I'm joined by my fellow Brit and hand lettering expert, Ian Barnard, American retro design expert, Dustin Lee, and the incredibly talented South African illustrator, Lisa Glantz. In this week's episode, we're joined by Allie Toney, a super talented young designer who actually works with us here at Design Cuts. Allie brings a great perspective to the show in terms of what it's like to be a young designer fresh out of college. It was fascinating to hear what graduates are feeling as they find their way in the creative industry, as well as getting a first-hand look at the creative college experience. Thanks to Allie for joining us, and without further ado, let's get into the show. So this week I'm really excited because we are joined by a Design Cuts team member, the very talented Allie Toney. Am I saying that right? I've never actually said your last name out loud, Allie.
That's correct.
Allie Toney. Okay, it's quite a designery name. But yeah, Allie actually does a bunch of design work for us. She really helps us make things look incredibly pretty and nice over at Design Cuts. And I was really keen to have her on the show because we've had a few super established designers who are perhaps a little bit older than I am, more experienced and so on. And Allie is a recent graduate from, where was your design college again, Allie?
The University of South Alabama. So it's out of Mobile, Alabama.
Cool. So I thought it would be really interesting to get the grad younger designer perspective of just kind of that inception point of fresh out of college, entering into the industry, really your perspective on things, where you're looking to take it, if you had any questions for us, and just mixing it up on the show really with that youthful perspective. We were saying before recording this, we're all horrendously jealous, I think, of your age and the position you're in currently, the world being your oyster and all that.
I still think I'm youthful, Tom. Don't speak for all of us. But by the way, I feel like we need to say today, well, when this goes live, it won't be, but today is Tom's birthday. Happy birthday, Tom.
Happy birthday, Tom.
Thanks. But that was a harmony of birthday wishes. Thank you, guys. First of all, Allie, do you want to say hi to the listeners? Just to put
Hi,
you on the spot.
listeners. Yeah.
Great. Good.
I'm excited to be here. I'm nervous. I have listened to the podcast before, and there's just a wealth of knowledge that's on here. And so it's honestly kind of shocking that I'm even here to contribute in any way, but I hope that any people who are kind of in my similar situation can relate to it, and that some of the things that we'll talk about will be relevant to someone. So
yeah, I'm sure they will be. I mean, that's not always the case with us four, but you can bring some relevance, I'm sure.
That's how we felt when we first started.
That's true. That takes me back. So Ali, could we get maybe a little 1-2 minute backstory of how you got started, any early creative experience right up to the present day? Because I don't know a lot of that stuff, to be honest. I know the time we've worked together, but I don't know all the background.
Okay, so I know that most people who were designers, or a lot of people in the creative field, had some sort of, they always knew, they always doodled or drew, or they always had that kind of creative drive that pushed them into that career. I honestly didn't. I just I always enjoyed photography. That's something that I did kind of stumble upon myself. But when I went to college, I was undecided in my major. I went to the counselor. She went through a bunch of stuff, and it came down to an art field, a doctor, and a teacher. So I was I don't like math. I don't like science, and open wounds make me queasy. So I ended up in the art field. Yeah. So I started at South, and our track is like very strictly 4 years. So I ended up being like a little bit behind, had to take some summer classes. And I had my first class with Diane Gibbs. And I just fell in love with design. I fell in love with the aspect of like being able to help people, because it's something close to my heart, and I always wanted to do it, but I always had like I want to do this, but and design was the one thing that I kind of found that there was no but for. I just could like creatively explore myself and like the world around me, and then having client work, you can help other people visually like translate what they're trying to say, and that's a really powerful thing, and it's design's all around us. So I kind of fell in love with design. I went through college. I graduated in July of last year, and it's hard to believe that it's actually been a year. My first job I stumbled into was with yours truly, Tom, and Diane is actually the one who connected us.
Yeah, big thanks to Diane. She's like the ultimate connector. For anyone who doesn't know her, she does amazing work. Is she a lecturer herself?
Yeah.
Yes. So she
I think so.
She's really awesome. I guess I was lucky enough to be in her program, and I'm not trying to just toot her horn. She's just great, and she honestly like invests herself in her students, and she says that like right now she's trying to come up with a better word than matchmaking, but that's kind of what she did for us. So like she put us together, and she sees who she thinks might be a good fit, given the fact that one of her superpowers is like networking. And so she put us together, and I have been working with Design Cuts since, in addition to doing some freelance and other work. So that's honestly a brief synopsis of how I came to be here.
Perfect. And yeah, big shout out to Diane. She's absolutely lovely. And as Allie mentioned, she essentially connects a lot of her students with people who need aspiring young talented designers. And I know Dustin, she connected you with Suzanne, your main designer, who does incredible work from everything I can see. So it's good, to be honest. I love the whole thing about it, because people are always looking for designers, but there's just so like it's such a good fit. There's so much up and coming talent, but I think there's also a very common thing. I know so many friends who did graphic design degrees and couldn't get a job afterwards.
And
yeah, that's true.
Just to do a little shout out for her, she has her own podcast, which is a live podcast called Design Recharge, which is amazing. She has a lot of amazing people on there, and it's just like a live just conversation. But yeah, she's amazing. She's, of all the people I've ever met, like she's one of the few where you can be like, she's totally selfless. She does this totally to help people.
Yeah.
No ulterior motives behind it. It's purely because she likes to help and connect people. The closest thing would be maybe Tom is very close to that in a male version.
Yeah.
My hair's not as strong as Diane's, but no, she's really good at what she does. So, Allie, I don't want you to sit and tell me how great Design Cuts is, but how has it been, the transition from college to working in the industry now?
I think that I have honestly had the really idyllic situation happen where I, pretty soon after I graduated, Tom thought this was really weird whenever I was first meeting him, but I went to Maine and picked blueberries on a farm, and I told him that, and he was like, "You're doing what now?" And I was like, "Yeah, I graduated and I'm picking blueberries now." So like I don't think that I'm as relatable in the fact that like I was lucky enough to know Diane, and she connected me, and I didn't necessarily have to go searching, and super lucky with that. But Design Cuts, I've been able to work remotely, so I can work from home in PJs and wake up, and there is a time difference. So I wake up like as soon as I can, and I hit the coffee and I message everybody and like check and see what's going on and what I have to do that day. And I think that honestly, when it first started, I was just I was nervous that it wouldn't work out. That like the time difference wouldn't be right, or maybe I wouldn't be the right fit for them. And it was like my first working experience. And as a recent graduate, you always doubt your abilities, I think, in the beginning.
I remember when we had went to a dinner as a group when I had come down to visit in Alabama, and I remember you saying that you had just done the blueberry farm thing. And you were like, oh, I don't know about this. I don't know what Tom thinks of me. I don't know if they like me. Am I doing a good job? Yeah, I remember you being quite anxious about it. I
did vulnerably lay myself out there with you when I met you, Dustin. But there was that refractory period where I was just like so lost, I was just kind of like trying to like, fake it till you make it. So I was just like, I got this. This is fine. I know what I'm doing. But then I would have these existential crises where I'm just kind of like, am I a designer? Like, what is design? And so I at first it was a little bit more difficult, and then we transitioned and we got to know each other better, and we got to know like our working relationship. I started to learn what they wanted and like who Design Cuts was as a brand, and aesthetically like who they were aiming to be. And but obviously like you have to in the beginning, I guess, draw back where your personal design biases are, your biases. But so like my personal style might not actually coincide with what they were looking for with a certain bundle or a certain like advertisement or whatever. And
which is true of any client.
Right.
Really.
So that was a learning curve. But once we kind of got through that, and then Matt, the creative director, he came on full time, and he kind of like scooped me under his wing, and like it's been just really great since then. I guess I can just kind of toot Design Cuts horn in the fact
so
that
what you're saying is you were really struggling when it was the two of us working together, and now Matt's taken over. You're infinitely more happy.
Pretty much.
Which I can totally understand that.
Yeah. Allie, can I ask you? So I'm curious. Every time I say that,
you were just curious.
Should make that into a drinking game for people listening. I'm curious.
Mm-hmm.
Tom, so I got, like Tom, I have an amazing designer working for me who I also was put in touch with through Diane Gibbs. And I feel like Tom has like a warm, inclusive environment. It's a feeling I get from the business. Can you tell me what is some of the things that immediately come to mind? Like maybe one or two things that immediately pop in mind that make you feel like I really like working here, that maybe I can apply to my little business.
As in like working remotely, how I still feel like a team member.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you said, like a few minutes ago, you said I feel like this is a really good fit, and I just feel like this like fits with me well. Yet you're on the other side of an ocean on a different time zone, and you feel that way. And I'm on the other side of our country from Suzanne, who works for me, and I'm like, how can I make things as good as I can for her? So what do you feel like they've done that has been good for you?
Well, can I ask you a quick question first?
Yeah.
I feel like Diane told me that, like you and Suzanne regularly chat, like you'll carve out a time where you'll both be working together and chatting either over like the computer via like video or.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes all of the difference. I think that was what made a huge difference with me. Before, obviously, like we all know how busy Tom is, and he gives 200% to everybody that works for him. And he's also trying to grow the business. So that takes time in itself. So Tom, like he can't sit and like micromanage little designs that I'm doing, So like whenever Matt was able to come in and he was able, like we set up the Trello board, which was huge. It went from me trying to like sift through all of my emails that I'm getting from separate team members to me having organized Like, this is what is going to be coming up for social, and this is what's coming up for the next bundle, and this is what's going to be coming up for like a separate thing. That was huge.
Okay.
And then I got on the Slack. So like it's you guys know what Slack is? Yeah.
Yeah, Dustin, you use it, don't you?
For whoever doesn't know, it's like a chat app. So
it's like what MSN Messenger used to be like.
Yeah.
Where you used to,
For the oldies.
But way better.
Yeah.
So I think that also made a huge difference because I was able to like have kind of instant and more personable communication with everyone on the team. So like if someone needed something from me, it wasn't as sterile as like this long listed email. It was like Sim or Raluca hopping on and being like, hey, Allie, I put something on the Trello board. I'm sorry if it's last minute, And, you know, there's like little emojis and like little, you know, animated things that make it feel like you're actually talking to a person and make you feel more part of the team. And so those two things I think were big, you know, like.
So to reiterate, to make sure I'm getting the lessons that I can try to glean, it sounds like because they're communicating really well with you, so you're feeling like included, even though you're far away, through the Slack and through the Trello or through the Slack and just talking to each other in video. And then the Trello boards, it sounds like makes it crystal clear what you need to do, so there's not that anxiety of, am I missing something? Did I forget something? Where's that email?
Exactly.
I think from my perspective, sorry to jump in, Allie, but it needs to work from both ways. So obviously from you, we want great design work, which you've absolutely been stepping up with. And for everyone listening, Allie is hugely, hugely talented. But I think we need to be providing value as well beyond just money. So we want to help make you a better designer. And I think especially now, Matt, our creative director, has been able to take the reins. As you said, I just simply didn't have time. And I hated that because I wanted to give the time.
Right.
I could just quite often never find it. But now Matt's been effectively training you up and directing you. Your work is just getting better and better. And so I would say I always want to make these episodes as applicable to the listeners as possible. And I would say anyone who's managing remote staff, it's really your responsibility not just to extract work out of them, but to make them better at what they do. And that will not only feel good and, you know, you feel like you're kind of fostering talent, but it will actually benefit the end work and it will benefit you, especially in the long term. You know, they're more likely to go and contract somewhere else, or less likely rather to go and contract somewhere else. And yeah.
I was going to ask about that. So when you say making them better, so for instance, I have Suzanne working for me, and we're building digital products. I'm happy to give her freedom to do whatever, but what would that look like? Like I can't afford an art director. What does that look like? Does that look like giving a subscription to different learning tools or?
Well, it seems like you are acting as her art director, you know, like you guys are, I think while Matt is obviously like my art director and he has tons of experience like in the field, he's invaluable in that experience and it has like made me grow completely as a designer. Like super talented guy, lucky to work with him. And but like you have to give yourself some credit here. Like you've built a business from the ground up and you have an eye for that obviously, or else you wouldn't be selling these products. So like her working back and forth with you, like that is an art direction. Like you're giving that collaboration that she needs to like bounce something off of you and be like, you know, does this look okay? I've been staring at this for 8 hours and, you know, we all need that.
Oh, okay. Is that what you're thinking too, Tom? Like that kind of stuff?
Yeah. Like, you've talked to me about how you work with Suzanne. It's not like from day one, you just went, right, good luck. Like you obviously like have a bar of quality and rounds of feedback. And yes, like we do stuff with some internal team members where we've helped them sign up to courses and whatnot. But I think genuinely just that feedback loop is the most useful thing because essentially you're just becoming a sponge for the experience of someone who's got 20 years more experience than you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I think for anyone listening who is perhaps less experienced, a little bit younger, etc., just try and contract with a company, because I did it back in the day. I did quite a lot of contracting remotely, and it was very transactional. There was no learning from it. So it was very much, we need all this work doing, and I just churn it out like a factory output kind of thing. I would never think, oh, they've really taken me under their wing or mentored me or helped me to get better in any kind of way. And I think it just accelerates the learning curve massively. So that is not every company, but if you can go and find one which offers that, I think that's a great thing.
How are people meant to find that though? Like without a Diane, if they haven't got a Diane, how they?
That's the only way. She's got this market covered.
Yeah. No, they're screwed, I think. No. I mean, like, how do you find any job? But I guess just being selective about the jobs that you apply for, and maybe I think it's always good to be assertive enough to fire questions back in an interview instead of just answering questions. So you're actually saying, this looks like a great place to work. I love what you guys do, etc. But I'm actually really looking for, a company that can help me to grow as a designer, where that will therein benefit you in the long term too. Do you offer any kind of mentoring? Do you offer training, et cetera, et cetera? Those are all good questions to ask, rather than just like, yes, I will be, your dancing monkey and do whatever you tell me to do.
Actually, there's a site you can actually go to that employees and ex-employees can rate the company on how good it was to work for them.
Can we cut that bit from the podcast? I'll have a mutiny on our hands. The facade of it being a happy place to work will fall apart.
You've set the level quite high, I suppose.
Yeah.
No, I have heard of sites like that. I think especially for big corporates and things, it can be very revealing. Yeah.
But I want to touch on something back when you were doing blueberry picking.
Right.
Because actually, for me, the truth is I didn't come straight out of college and go and get a job. I think something that I found that graphic design stuff, there wasn't this they wouldn't set you up in terms of getting you employment like other university courses would do. Because there's ones like engineering, and you go and work with a company while you're at the university,
right? And
then they take you on once you've finished, and there's this sort of process. Whereas as a graphic designer, it's just like, well, you're done. See you later.
Yeah.
Hope you make it.
Find your own way.
And for me, that was a sort of similar experience. Not that I was picking blueberries, because we don't have the weather for that, but it was. I just went and got my old job back at a clothing company, and I was just a salesperson there. And it was, getting myself ready and getting my portfolio ready to when that, my first job I got.
Right.
But I think sometimes you feel like the emotions of feeling like, oh, not getting a job straight away. Am I really a designer? Is this something I should be doing? Surely I should have a job by now, or stuff like that. But I think it's just a case of be patient. There's much more opportunities now. I couldn't do remote working when I first left university. I couldn't have done it for actually about 10 years after I left university, because the internet was still in its infancy. We could, an email took about an hour to download. That was
Oh wow.
So, but Ali, I've got a question actually. Presumably, a lot of people either from your university or other peers who don't have the Diane Gibbs option.
Right.
So, on the whole, what's the landscape looking like for them in terms of jobs and so on?
So I think that this one is, I guess, where before, whenever I was I'm incredibly lucky, it's because I've seen my friends go through this process, the graduation, and then that big question mark of what am I going to do with my life? Because it's a blessing and a curse that our field is as vast as it is. Like, there's so many different directions that you can go. You can go like commercial, you can go agency, you can freelance, you can try to work remotely. Like, within that, there's publication, there's web, there's UX UI, there's branding, there's, there's so much. And you kind of are left with like, where do I fit? And I think that I was lucky enough that my professors along the way, they were like, don't freak out if the first job that you have isn't where you want to be. It probably won't be where you want to be, but you just need that experience. So with a lot of my peers, we graduated and they just started they had to live. So, like they would work whatever jobs that they could while they were trying to work on their portfolio and get themselves out there. A lot of my classmates stayed in Mobile, which worked for some and didn't work for some, because in that small of a community, you do know people, which can be a benefit to you in getting that job, because if anything comes up, they'll be like, oh, well, so-and-so is looking for a job. And there's like AIGA there, which is helping some of my classmates.
Pretty
But
good one, too.
So I think that I've seen a lot of struggle with my classmates, and that's why I do feel very lucky in the fact that I did have the Diane connection. That's what
I would add this though. There's luck involved for sure, but I know so I've had 3 people that have worked for me through Diane. And I remember Tom, I can't remember if I introduced Tom or how Tom met Diane, but Tom met Diane around that time and was on her show and talked to her. And then because I'm sure he asked, is there anyone that I can get that, would be a good fit? You had done such a good job of, doing great work, being easy to work with, being prompt, all the things, that she was like, I've got just the person for you. So it was one of those things where it was luck, but it was also preparation meeting with coincidences of Tom happening to come into the picture at that time, etc.
100%. And I don't know if you know this, Allie, but you weren't the only option.
Yeah, I do know.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, like quite simply, we liked your portfolio the best. And I think, again, I want to go actionable for the listeners. So particularly people out there, whether you're, younger or whatever, like if you're trying to find your way in the industry and get work and get hired, I think the first thing obviously is the portfolio. Maybe the first thing is like how to get in front of people. So if you haven't got Diane Gibbs, then obviously it's the application process, etc. But once you're in front of them, the portfolio is kind of everything. And in your case, it was a good fit for us as a company. It was very balanced. It was interesting. It wasn't generic. It stood out. It was clean, but had creative flair. All the kind of layouting and spacing, for the most part, was very, very on point, and it showed variety. And as I say, it was a good fit for us. You might show that same portfolio to another company, and it's like, well, you have talent, but that's just not really our aesthetic at all.
Right.
So I think for anyone out there who's applying, be aware of that. Like, try and find someone that's a comparable fit for you, because it won't be every company, and that doesn't mean you're not talented.
And I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to say that this is exactly what I did, but in school, like we were told and we were taught to do some research on who you're applying for, and not tailor your portfolio, but kind of like you want to know who you're trying to work for, and you wouldn't be applying to them if they weren't a good fit for you. So like I tried to pick what I thought you would be interested in,
Interesting. I didn't know you'd done that.
Well, I mean,
props though. Like,
well, I would think that's something you should do. Yeah, that's what I would do.
Yeah. Smart.
Well, it's like going to an interview. If you're gonna, work at a certain place, you're gonna dress appropriately.
Yeah.
So I guess it's like it's one of the first things that's gonna be an impression. So
I don't know if I've shared this story on the podcast before, but nothing annoys me more than when you've got like a young designer or anyone else and they just print out the same generic CV and send it to 5,000 companies en masse. And it's like the job application equivalent of spam. And it sucks so much. And I like, having hired enough people now, I've seen enough of those CVs where you literally feel like company number 4,999 in the queue kind of thing, and it's not specific or personal at all. And because everyone seems to do that, you really stand out. So in your case, Allie, you clearly customized the work and made that a relevant fit, etc. But let's say there had been more competition and someone with equal talent had customized it even more and actually designed some stuff for us and put in all this personal messaging or woven a graphical narrative of why they'd be a good fit for design cards, they'd probably be the one sat on the show right now. And I just and that's not to undermine your application. Obviously you nailed it and it was great, but I just think for anyone listening, like, you can't take that stuff too far. Like, I've never really had like a proper job, so to speak. I've always just done my own thing, but it got to a point where I thought I was going to need one, and I applied to a design agency and basically stalked the CEO and the team on LinkedIn, etc. And then it was for a web design job, and I was audacious enough to actually redesign the agency's website. And so I walked in, and instead of the guy firing questions at me, we start having an informal chat about him playing bass in his band and chatting about all music, because I knew that stuff about him to break the ice. And then instead of him firing questions at me, I plugged in a USB and gave him a presentation on how to redesign his own website, which, like, the level of effort, because I knew I wanted to apply for one job, so all my effort could go on that one place, rather than spreading it across 5,000 and diluting the impact and being really generic.
Right.
So I never get when people do that.
I'm glad I didn't have to go against you.
Well, to be honest, I look back and I was like, it was probably crappy, like my redesign suggestion. I was just this kid who actually had no idea, but the thought was kind of there.
Yeah.
My brother recently applied for a job, and then a woman named Lynn, who works for me right now, is applying for some different jobs, and both of them had like 3 or 4 hour interviews multiple times for jobs. And my brother and Lynn were kind of like, wow, I can't believe they're making me do these long interviews. And at first I was like, yeah, that's insane. And then I started to think more, and Tom, I'm curious, trying to get people drunk in this drinking game this time. I'm curious if you experience this too. I thought, well, of course I do, because when you hire someone, I mean, you're committed to them. You are going to be paying them for a long time. They're going to influence how other people in the business work. They can end up costing you massive amounts of money if it's the wrong choice, or they can end up bringing like a lot of money into the business, a lot of like positivity into the business. So you have to be
if you're basing that on the 30-minute exchange.
Yeah, well, and when they do things like you said, Tom, put all that effort into it, it gives you that reassurance that, oh, they care about the business. Like, you take care of me and show me you care about the business, and I'll take care of you and make sure, we do what we can to make you happy.
Of course.
Because it's just so critical.
And
sorry, Lisa.
Sorry. I was just going to say, the same applies when you first reach out to the potential, company that you want to work for. It depends on how you, what you say in your covering letter. Is it, as you said, Tom, is it like a generic? Is it something personal? And I just found, because I recently went through a process of hiring somebody to help me, and the person that I ended up going with, I also went through Diane, but I actually ended up going with somebody that Diane didn't find for me, because she literally off the bat just emailed me. And although I did have that a few times from different people, but her particular one was quite unique, because she kind of like, she told me what she could do for me. It wasn't a case of, She was just giving me her history of working. She did obviously tell me that, but she was so keen and so eager, and she was honest, and all the combination of everything just went a long way. So
positive, eager, authentic.
Yeah.
I love what you said as well, where she's like, what she can do for you.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you saw on my personal Instagram, I did a post about this recently of flipping it round. Instead of like, what can my audience do for me? Like, what value can I give my audience?
Exactly.
And it's the same thing here. Like, if you're going in thinking, I need this job because I need money and I'm going to extract this from it. But if you completely angle it towards the potential company, and it's like, here's what I think I can bring to the table.
I mean, I was already relieved. I hadn't even hired her, and I was really like, oh my God, this woman's going to save my life.
And two, you can so tell when someone doesn't actually do that. Like, for instance, sometimes I'll get pitches from people that want to do marketing services they want to sell to me, and they'll be like, I heard you on this podcast, and they'll name some podcast that I was on. And then the rest of the thing is a form thing. And I'm like, and you can tell everything else was form. They just got that one little part and kind of customized it. See, like Tom was saying, Tom was going really into depth and how can I help these people? And Lisa, you were saying that too. If you don't do that, people can see that from a mile away. You can't just customize one little thing and throw everything else in.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. Hi, insert name.
Exactly.
But yeah, Allie, going back to your application, I could absolutely tell that you had researched us. And I can't remember exactly what you said, but I remember it was enthusiastic, it was positive, and it showed due diligence in terms of like, I love what you guys are doing. You were kind of picking out examples of that. And then you followed that up by being genuinely really lovely. And I was saying before you jumped on the show, I was like, Allie's really sweet. Like, I knew Ian and Lisa hadn't met you before. And that has actually gone so far in you working with us, because I think it's gone like pretty smooth and increasingly so with the design work. But even at points where we've been trying to like figure stuff out or like adjust the style, if you were an abrasive character, it wouldn't have worked. But we'd literally just be throwing all this feedback at you and trying to figure stuff out. And you'd be super positive throughout and be like, yeah, let's give it a try and so on. And that is, I don't know if you can fake that, to be honest. Maybe it just comes from your character. But I have to say, like, that's the biggest thing for us. Like,
That's
even
so
ahead
true.
of the design work, because a lot of that stuff can improve and be trained and so on. But yeah, that's just been absolutely huge. So for anyone who is out there trying to land a job or trying to move up in the job, like I just can't say enough about like, make things easy, make things positive, be amenable. Like, even when we've had to kind of rush deadlines and stuff, we've tried not to mess you around, but you're always super responsive and positive and never kind of grumble about that. And so that's why recently we've been talking about, if anything, ramping it up considerably. That's not a natural path that's just to be expected. It's not, that happens just at a certain point in time. Like, it's going that way just because you're generally such a joy to work with.
Yeah. I mean, attitude is enormous. I think it's almost 50% of the person.
Oh, yeah.
The job. Yeah.
I'd rather work with someone that was not as good a designer, that had a really positive attitude and wanted to learn.
Exactly.
Easy.
You want your life to be much made easier. You don't want it to be a heartache. So yeah,
100%. Although for the record, Allie has both, because she rocks at design.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. Didn't mean she didn't.
Her head is slowly filling up the screen.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I am feeling like pretty like blushy, But
Okay. So yeah, what are your thoughts, Allie, like in terms of working relationships from your side and breaking into the industry?
I can like, in the realm of design cuts, it's really about like how bad you want it, It's gonna show your attitude and the how many revisions you're willing to do, and the fact that if you're open to constructive feedback, it's going to be based on the fact that like you respect the people that you're working with and you want to work with them. If you don't respect and you don't want to be a part of what they're doing, then I feel like you're going to be less likely to tweak things to the way that they're doing them. You know what I mean? Like, if someone's like, I'm just not feeling like that works, but you think that you know better in some way, then you're not going to be receptive to changing it. And as a graduate, they tell you like not to sell yourself short, but it's also about being humble in the business.
Can I ask you a question then, Allie, on the back of that? How do you find the balance between effectively leaving any ego at the door, but not becoming like a puppet?
Right.
You know what I mean? Because I've been in those jobs where literally they might as well have just like had their hand touching my hand and moving the mouse for me. And I sincerely hope we've never been like that. But you know what I mean? It's like you need to push back to an extent.
Right.
But you need to soak up what they're offering and adapt. So how do you find that balance?
I think that the way that I found the balance is by offering more than one option in the beginning. You know, like whenever I do things, I tend to give several different options, you know, with varying degrees of success in my own opinion. But my opinion might not be the same and is often not the same. Well, maybe not. I'm not going to say often, but like it might not always be the same as, you know, you or Matt or whoever I'm working with at the time, because everybody is different, you know? So I think that the way that I found is easiest to keep like my personal feelings and ego in check was just to give multiple options so that it's not as personal if one doesn't work out or if there's a lot of tweaking that needs to be done. Because it is a process. You know, I think it was also like whenever I was a student, I didn't get it right on the first try. You know, projects and the creative process is a back and forth. It's evolving. It's getting a pair of fresh eyes and an opinion. It's leaving the computer and going and doing something, you know, maybe outside and coming inside and looking at it and being like, okay, that's a little tight. It needs some room to breathe, you know. It's just, it is a process. And the more that I like reminded myself that this is the normal process, this is just with someone else and rather than just happening in my head. That's kind of the way that I try to look at it.
So you mentioned you've got a few friends where they've struggled to find work.
Right.
Have you got any that fallen into work, but it ended up being for like a Meryl Streep in Devil Wears Prada type character, where they're just really eccentric and they're just like, what is this? Do it again. And like anything like that going on?
Oh, I feel like I want to tread carefully on this answer.
Naming no names.
Yeah.
I do have a couple of friends who have jobs but are not necessarily happy in the job. And I think it comes from a little bit of like lack of creative freedom, which I think is temporary. Like as an entry-level designer, you're not going to be creating all the time. You're not going to be, you know, feeding that part of your soul or whatever, you know, like you're going to be doing adverts and you're going to be flowing text and it's not glamorous in the beginning necessarily.
I've talked to a lot, like, because I think we share a similar network of people that we know. And I've talked to some people where they'll say, oh, well, in this particular job I do, basically they're just putting the logo on top of a stock image and then posting it on Facebook or something like that to try to drive traffic to make sales for a business. And they do that all day long in some shape or form. I'm not talking about anyone specific here. Literally, it's just a very common thing. And it's grueling.
That sounds like they'd be replaced by batch processing in Photoshop.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So
that sucks though, Dustin. You ever had that kind of job?
No, I had more the Devil Wears Prada type situation. And it was it was literally horrifying. One day I was so scared that I just told my boss down in the basement where the Devil Wears Prada lady made us work that I wasn't going to show up tomorrow because I was scared. And then I did. And then I didn't. It was scary. Like, I'm not even joking. It was scary, guys.
Really?
Sounds traumatizing.
It does.
It was horrifying. In fact, I'm so scared about it that I would not even go into detail for fear of retaliation.
Wow.
That's how bad it was.
Even after all these years.
Well, no, because it was by a super powerful lawyer that was not like that.
Yeah.
So I did I not everyone can have a Diane Gibbs. Could do a drinking game with Diane Gibbs' name too in this episode. But she could have picked from any of probably hundreds of people to choose from. So for people that don't have Diane Gibbs, they have another Diane Gibbs in their life, or maybe many of them. How do you think they get onto their radar where when they see someone like Tom, they say, I've got just the person for you? Like, what do you think made you that person?
So not a Diane Gibbs. Like, I was fortunate. Like, she raised me. Like, she calls us our little, like her little children. So like, I'm her child. But I think the best way is to integrate yourself into some sort of community, whether it's AIGA or anything comparable. It's not going to be comfortable necessarily. Like, you might not have a built-in community if you're not going to design school, and that's okay. It's just about surrounding yourself to where you don't feel like an island, because I think that it's detrimental to yourself and like who you are as a designer and a creative to be connected to other people. And going to conferences, going to like meetings, not being afraid. I think this is what Diane does, and I think it's amazing. Diane just sees people that she admires and respects, and she'll like follow them on Instagram, and then she'll just talk to them. She'll just message them and be like, hey, and I went to school with someone who's brave enough to create connections that way. And what better way to do it? I mean, we are all just people. So if you just message them and just be like, hey, would you mind looking at my stuff? Maybe they could fit you somewhere.
What specifically about you, though, made her recommend you? Like, other than you did great work, like, do you feel like, oh, these are the things that made me stand out as someone to be recommended?
I feel like she told me, because she's an encourager too. I mean, basically, I'm just going to be Diane Gibbs's like cheerleader, apparently. But she told me that the fact that I'm like able to adapt to certain design situations, and in school, I like to keep things very various. Like, all the projects that I wanted to do, I never wanted them to feel like the same project, because that's one of the best things that you get to do in school is you get to just create whatever.
That's so true.
And you get to be whoever you want to be, and you get to be a chameleon if you want to. You're not set to a brand. You're not set to anything. And I really tried to utilize that in school. And I guess it came across in when she thought about it, because like Design Cuts is like that as well as a brand. We offer, or Tom, whoever, Design Cuts.
No, it's we. You're part of the family now.
Oh, thank you. But like, there's extremely clean, professional mock-up bundles, and then there's like artistic bundles, and there's textures, and there's something for everyone. And I think that it fits because it feeds that part of me that wants that variety, that like feeds off of, having that kind of, I'm interested in all of it. Maybe I don't like niche into one thing. So I think that was a big part of why she thought I would be a good fit for Design Cuts.
And can I just say, I've been getting so many questions lately from my followers on Instagram saying, I keep worrying about being a Jack or Jill of all trades. And particularly in your case, Allie, that has been such an asset. Like the other day, we were talking about you doing product creation like Suzanne. And I'm so excited for that, but it wouldn't work if you could only do one thing incredibly well.
Mm-hmm.
That literally couldn't work. But the fact that we have like 6, I think, different product ideas, and they're all completely different, completely fits our brand. So honestly, like, but yeah, people keep messaging about this one thing, being like, I'm really worried. Like, you guys get it as well, I'd imagine, right?
Yeah.
And we've had it on the podcast. And it seems to be a real bugbear for people, but I would honestly view it as a strength. I think, and in fact, I gave an answer about this recently, but I think the key is package up all of your disparate skills into something which is more focused, if that makes sense. So,
yeah.
I think the examples I gave were, you could have 10 different skills you're good at, which technically makes you a jack of all trades. But then the niche down focused version of that is I take these skills and I make brands appear in a more positive, happy light, for example. So if you want to work with me, I'm the happy creation designer. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Rather than, hey, I'll do anything you want and I can do any skill. People come to you for your specific
Like
thing.
In a weird loop, it's almost like a niche for you. Like that Allie does that. So Allie having those multiple skills is this perfect niche for a business like yours where you need a lot of things done well. You know what I mean? Like I needed someone that could do a very specific retro thing, and you needed someone that could do a variety of things. So that is the niche. Like in a weird, so weird.
I think there's quite a lot of companies that would need people, you know, that have a variety of skills. I mean, you're going to have companies like marketing companies. Not every one of their clients are going to have the same look and feel. So having an interior, internal designer is actually going to be beneficial if they can kind of do everything. So I mean, it's
like photography, right? If you can do photography and design and
it's a
copywriting,
bonus.
like whatever it might be, like
I suppose it depends what you want to do, because like I'll give you an example because for me, I've been for this sort of, I used to be jack of all trades, and I get just local companies and it would just be a very slow and steady, just about getting enough in. As soon as I niche down to the sort of the smallest thing, that's when I opened up a ton of work for me. Because like I got a job with like a branding agency that already had designers in it, would then get me for my individual talent to come onto a project. So it depends on what you want to do. If you're happy doing the sort of jack of all trades, then like Tom says, package it in that case. But if there's if you just want to do lettering, then you have to, there's two things you need to do is practice a lot. And the other thing is to make yourself stand out, because I was just thinking about this the other day, that I was in a very blessed position that it wasn't that crowded. It is very crowded now. But the way to stand out is to have something different that no one else has. So bringing your own personality to, or uniqueness to something of lettering, because like you can look through a lot of like the lettering pages and they all look the same. What is it that you bring? And this can be the same with the jack of all trades. There's something that you can bring that's a little bit different, and it could be over a range of skills, and that's going to, I suppose, push you above all the rest.
Well, I agree. And I think that it is partially like, where do you see yourself in like 10 to 15 years? And the things that you're doing now, are they informed by that? So like if you want to be a design superstar, you know, you would niche down. Like most design superstars, I think, are like very specifically, they have a brand, they do one thing and they do it wonderfully, you know? But if that's not who you want to be, like if you just want to be a designer, and I'm not just a designer, but like if you want to if you just want to be you and you don't necessarily want to reach out to like thousands of people and make your life like that, then a jack of all trades is just fine for you, you know? I think, but there is that push, there is that worry that, and I even have it. Like I question, you know, like, should I be focusing in on something more specifically? Should I, you know, be trying to hone one skill? And I think that the reason that you guys are getting all of those questions is I think there is a little bit of pressure in the industry to find that super thing that makes you.
Because I think probably a lot of people are aspiring to be the Aaron Draplin or whoever, even if that's not necessarily the right fit for them. And I can actually feel a tension. Some of the people messaging me this are saying, it pains me, it kills me to think of niching down and giving up all these things I love. I really don't want to do it. But I'd love to be like XYZ design celebrity over here who's super niched. And the two don't add up.
I think we need more companies and more people that are in positions where they're doing a variety of things that are being glamorized or pushed forward, celebrated, perfect word, celebrated for what they're doing, because it's just as sexy, just as amazing, just as important, if not more in many cases, than niching down on a very specific thing. And I feel like because of that, people feel like they need to niche down in order to get all the credit or admiration they want. And I don't think that's true. Like, it's a very important job, you know?
I mean, with any design, well, with any career, often you evolve. So I think people, especially young designers coming into their careers now, are too stressed with trying to know exactly where they want to go. I think give yourself 10 years. I mean, mess around, go from one company to the next to figure out what's going on, for you. And before you know it, you either will realize, man, I want to be jack of all trades, or I will really want to do, I don't know, web design or whatever. So it's too much pressure, I think, when you're young.
Mm-hmm.
I think you got to enjoy it. I think you got to, just go with, I think the way you're doing it is perfectly, because you're getting so much experience and you're doing a bit of everything.
Mm-hmm.
So you're getting a good idea of what you like and don't like. And maybe in 5 years' time, you'll realize, hey, I really don't like doing that.
Not to mention you're getting super attuned to what's popular, what is desired by designers, which in turn is desired by clients, or else the designers wouldn't be looking for those things. So you really are getting attuned to all that by a job like Design Cuts.
Yeah.
Can I give some advice of what would be really good for like adding to, especially if you're in college, is to like set up a YouTube channel where you're giving advice or going through your process of what you're doing on a project and recording it, because then if there's a company looking for you, they can see what you're like and your personality through the videos. It's not everyone's cup of tea, but it means that
not mine.
If they can see that you're helping other people, they can put you in their minds and understand, okay, he's really good at reaching out to other people and teaching them. I really like his design, because I've seen people get jobs like designers on YouTube from bigger either brands or bigger YouTubers, finding them out and doing design for like thumbnails and the website and whatever the branding of that person. So there's like a new there's stuff that I never that hasn't come up, that you can sort of do graphic design but in a slightly different way, in terms of you're still doing design, the same sort of design, but you're doing it in a world that's only just is still in its infancy and it's growing and growing.
Right.
That you can be like the designer to the graphic designer that caters for YouTubers or for Facebook people or stuff like that. And so I think it's thinking bigger. There's a much bigger aspects, and if you can set up if you can record your whole process of where you're doing stuff in college, that would really add as part of your CV. They can see that how hard you're working, if that's going to work for them and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
Allie, just before you jump in, sorry, because it's fresh in my mind, I know you hated doing our YouTube covers, but for anyone, it was like the most painful project for her. That's why I started laughing. But listening to Ian there, I think for anyone who's into that kind of design work, that could be such a powerful way to earn fresh out of college, because most YouTube covers suck, but they have such an impact on the stats and the views, and the data is there to back it up.
Can I say something? I find YouTube covers really hard as well.
Yeah, they are hard.
And
really
there are
difficult.
people would pay you if they knew that they would, it would increase the watch.
Oh, yeah.
It's like the perfect business model, because there's a lot of YouTubers who have huge audiences on there who make good money, but their covers suck.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And the work is ongoing because they're putting out regular videos. So it's not a one-off job. There's always going to be more work. And you just come up with like the top 100 you want to work with, make 100 stunning YouTube covers and send them a personalized message saying, I love your channel. I want to do this. I'm super passionate about YouTube covers. Here's one for free. Here's the stats of how much a good cover will improve your videos. So you'd get a return on me. And I'd love to do this for
It's
you.
too good
And
a business.
you start doing that for like a dozen people and regularly churning out work, that'd be a freaking awesome business for someone.
It's a good
Man,
business.
I even want to do that now.
Cut this out. This should be just for us to know. Only for our ears only. Because it's really an art, right? Like you have to be able to make one that looks good, big, but also grabs attention at like the size of a matchbook. I mean, it really is hard.
And also
Ali,
just
preaching to the choir, right?
yeah.
But I think
okay.
that in that project, you and I had our monthly meeting or whatever, and I told you, I was just like, I don't like it. It's not fun, and then it's not glamorous, you know. And you were just kind of like, well, what don't you like about it? And I was just kind of like, everything. But then I tried to like niche down to like, okay, this is what I'm struggling with, and this and this. And you were just like, well, it's all about your perspective and the mindset going into the project. And you're absolutely right. Because like you were like, just so you know, as I like was doing it, you were like, just so you know, like the amount of activity on those videos has completely started to jump since you've started redesigning those covers. And that in itself changes it, because you're seeing the effects of your work, and that's always gratifying.
Right.
So even if it's not necessarily the most like glamorous thing or the thing that you enjoy, there is a reason and there's a purpose, and you weren't just giving it to me to be like, she just needs to do something for Elizabeth.
It's not like busy work. It has an impact. And I think I said as well, as designers, if we see a page of beautiful design and one area of it that sucks, it's like a needle in our eye. Like it hurts to look at. You can only look at the crappy bit. Yeah. And so as you were redoing the thumbnails, I couldn't actually enjoy them all when there were two left that needed to be done that were hideous, because my eye went to the hideous ones. And so it becomes like this OCD kind of spring cleaning, I think was the phrase I used. And that's kind of weirdly satisfying. So for any junior designers where you're having to en masse, redo a bunch of layouts or whatever it might be, think of it like a spring clean, where it's actually really satisfying just to see it all become nice and pretty and good looking.
Oh, yeah.
And the thing, there's so many channels that are fairly big and have really inconsistent and rubbish thumbnails. And so being able to come in and say, look, this is what it looked like with Tom and his redoing a website, you could redo like their top couple of rows of thumbnails. You could do the banner they have, and that could really make an impact if they could see what it looks like. And it's something that they could, and you could give stats. If you did a few for free, you could give stats. Okay, this is how much more views they got from me doing their thumbnails.
Yeah, you do it for free and you get the testimonial.
Yeah.
Of them being like, I couldn't believe it. It increased by 50% overnight. And then you start putting out educational content like Ian talked about, actually teaching, here's how effective it is and here's how to design it better. And most of them won't be able to follow that and do it. But you better believe all the up and coming YouTubers will be saying how to make my thumbnails look nicer. And when you teach them and give away all that information for free and they think, hey, I'd rather just pay you to do it because you're the YouTube thumbnail gal. I'm not telling you to go and do this as another job, by the way. I'm only saying this because I know you hate it, Ali.
Next day, puts in a notice.
Built the perfect business model for Ali and trained her for it.
Gone. No. But another thing that like I thought about whenever you were talking about that, Ian, is the fact of like, if you were to go into your like college program journey and say, like, I'm going to document this and I'm going to put this out there. One, I commend you because whoa. And then two, I think that like for people who aren't fortunate enough to be able to afford to go to college, or like they don't have the time because they're having to work a full-time job, the ability to like, if you were to walk them through the projects that you were doing and kind of, you're paying for them to go to college a little bit. And that's really, talk about adding to the community in a selfless way. So I think that it's a great idea. Can't go back and do it, but if I go back to graduate school, which I do plan to eventually, maybe it's something that I would do, because it could be invaluable to either A, someone who couldn't go to college but wants to be a designer, or B, someone who is in college who just wants to listen to someone who's going through the same thing that they are.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I just had a thought on the back of some of this. Would you guys potentially be interested in, I can't help but think up these projects, but some kind of like mentoring thing? where we could do it in a more scalable way, where it's like a group chat with young designers who want a bit of experience. And I don't know.
Yeah.
I just
love
I just
it.
wrote
Yeah,
I just wrote mentoring on a bit of paper, so we'll come back to that another time. Ali, I would love to know, kind of selfishly and just out of curiosity,
Curious.
what
Drink.
like if I was I was just curious.
I'm going to do a T-shirt of that, by the way, because I'm curious.
Oh, please do.
You can just go.
No, I was just curious. Yeah, if I was a fly on the wall right now in a design college, or in a bar full of recent design grads, what's everyone talking about? What are the common conversations
like that.
outside of like, general student stuff, but like about design and the future and the industry? What's going on? I want to understand the youth
So like
there.
while you're in college or like right after you get out of college?
Kind of both.
I think when you're in college, it's mostly just like in the first few years, it's about the projects that you're doing and surviving. Because I know that like it's been a year out, and while I loved school, I feel like I've actually turned into a person again rather than a student. And so I think that a lot of the conversations, rather than it being like this big existential thing about where we can fit into the design community and what we can do, it's more just like, how do we live through these next few years? And like, are we going to graduate? And like, can we do this? So I think that during college, it's at least until you get to senior year. And then senior year,
It's the bubble of college, not thinking about the outside world, is what you're
Yes.
saying.
I think
Okay.
until you get to senior year, and then it starts to really hit you like, holy crap, I'm about to leave the bubble. Like, I'm about to leave the bubble, and then I need to make money, and someone needs to hire me, like, or I want someone to hire me. And then you start freaking out while like in like that's not the right words. And while you're trying to graduate, you're also freaking out about like your life as a whole and like the next step for you. Because we have like a path. I think a lot of people my age, you go to high school and you're expected to get good grades and graduate, and then go to college, and then you go to college and you're expected to get good grades and graduate, and then what? You're expected to get a job, but like, right, you don't have a roadmap. And so that senior year, you start to freak out about not having the map. And that's kind of what your conversations are about, is like, well, I really need to be working on my portfolio, but instead I'm doing, long division if you're having to take gen ed at that time. And so it's in college, I think it's mostly about the bubble. Once you get out of college, I think that the conversations then become about jobs and how like different experiences that everyone's having. And I know that me and my friends who I graduated, it's kind of us looking at the different paths that we've taken. Because when you're in school, you can constantly compare to each other because you're doing the same projects and you're all in the same group and in the same boat. And then you leave and you start, I've noticed that there's like a little bit of the grass is greener kind of thing going on, where I've had friends tell me like, wow, it's so cool that you get to work from home, and like it's so neat that you're, working remotely and you're kind of doing your thing or whatever, and you're independent contracting. And to me, it's like, it's really cool that you have insurance. And so it's,
Yeah.
I think that the conversations are about that, but also about like people that we're seeing on Instagram and people that we're following, like, have you seen so-and-so's work recently? And, like, have you listened to that podcast? Or
And how does that work? Is that in an inspiring way, or is it a bit of a like, oh, I'm never going to be as good as them way?
I think it's about your mindset. Like, you can go about it either way. You can look at what someone's doing and be like, man, I wish I was there. Or you can look at it and you can say, I want to be there one day, and I'm going to do everything that I can now to get there. Because most of the people that we're looking at, they're not our age. they're
Mm-mm.
10, 15 years down the line and they've already been where we've been. And it's a dangerous game to compare ourselves to people who have been in the industry for 15 years more than us.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's
Well said.
Ian, you're about 15 years older than Ali, aren't you, mate?
I'm more, I think.
Yeah.
there's a
16.
there's a saying, I think it's Chinese or maybe it's Japanese, I'd read it, and it was a brother inherits land, the other brother dies a little inside. And and I think the point is, you see this everywhere, right? We all experience this, where when someone else gets something, we all die a little bit inside. So, I'll talk to someone and they got a job. So, for instance, you talked about the insurance. Oh, I get to work from home. I get to do this. But, like, I don't have the insurance because I'm a freelancer or I'm a contractor, right? But you also can travel and do all these things. Or someone else I know got a job at a very, at least in the South, cool, why am I doing this? Cool design agency in the South. And then it turns out the person that's there, like, is actually pretty miserable. Like, they put them on salary and work them to the bone, and, like, they don't have much control. And yeah, I mean, I just think it's so easy to get in this trap where whatever we have, we think there's something better out there, and so we never actually enjoy the moment.
What we have.
Well, what a profound idea, enjoying the moment. Why did I even say that? I hate myself.
I totally get it. And I find it really interesting, actually, where you're at, Ali, because I never had that instant jump because I was doing this from quite a young age when I was like 12 or 13 and sucking and then getting very, very gradually and very slowly better over a long period of time. So there was no college graduation of, oh, now I'm in the real world. It was more just a very slow build up of that pressure, I guess. So I'd imagine it would be the same thing for you guys, but vastly accelerated and to a greater extreme because it happens in a much smaller window of, okay, now real life's all raining down at once. So
I think that I have listened to enough of the podcast here that it's the same thing that we all struggle with like doubt. And in the creative field, it's even more so. So, like, I guess you're riddled with doubt when you graduate. Like, you should have the assurance that you were good enough to graduate. You should have the assurance that you made it through 4 years and that you have been classically trained and whatever, you're ready, But instead, we look at the fact that the first job that we applied to, we didn't hear back. And then we look at the fact that maybe we did hear back, but we weren't the right fit. And I think that it is scary and it's such a doubtful process, but I guess it's about really looking at yourself and looking at what you want and asking what like do I need to do? Like, because I thought for years, I was like, okay, I'm leaving Mobile. I'm going to move to a bigger city. I'm going to, get that company job and I'm going to have a life, right? And then I went to school and my work became my life, and it's not a bad thing if it feeds you. And so I'm actually moving back to Mobile, and I'm going to, that's what I want. And I wouldn't have known that if I wouldn't have asked myself at the end of everything, like, is what I thought I wanted actually what I want? And it's one of those questions that I didn't necessarily like the answer at first, but then I was like, at the end of it, I need to be happy. And that's what we all want to be, right? So super philosophical, but
No, but it's so
yeah,
true.
Dustin, you got competition here, buddy.
I don't have Japanese sayings though, so
yeah, we want some haikus, please.
Yeah.
So I guess on a kind of closing note, Ali, are there any questions that you would have for us with anything we can help with? And no pressure if not, but I'd love to if we could.
I think that, I guess when you are all in this position, like I said, I imagine that you guys have all been in that beginning stages where there is doubt and you don't really know, and you've probably maybe talked about this on a podcast before, but like, did you ever have to ask yourself, you know, like, is this what I want to do? Or like, what will make me happy? And, you know, what was the way that you brought yourself back to your passion for what you were doing, and like design or art or creative field as a whole? Like, what brought you back?
Well, for me, I knew that I wanted to do something creative, and the job that I was in was not the greatest job, but I knew it was a stepping stone, and I kept reminding myself, even though I was literally worked to the bone and hours were hideous, pay was not so good either, but I knew the experience I was gaining was invaluable, and I just absolutely knew it was a stepping stone. I didn't resign myself to where I was, and I think maybe people forget that, like they forget that you can move on. If you don't like it, you can find another job. And I just used it as a learning curve. I stayed there for 2 years, and then jumped into a job that I really, really wanted. So yeah, definitely been there.
How about you guys?
What was the question again? I was like,
like, did you know? How did you know you were happy? Like,
okay,
did you know
so
that was what you wanted?
There was
to
a
do?
period like halfway through where I nearly became an electrician because I was not really enjoying it.
Oh, yeah.
Much.
Dude, you would have been a cool
Ju-
electrician, by the way.
Thanks.
The Honest Sparky Show.
There's something I did, and this is something everyone else can do actually, is make a 2-column, get a bit of paper, put a line down the middle, and there's 2 columns. There's a like and dislike, and you want to go through every aspect of design. So web design, you know, UX, UI, logo design, everything. And just in those boxes, put whether you like it or dislike it, or you can have a third one where you sort of somewhere in between. But what helped me was realizing that it was releasing me from the fact that I didn't have to like every aspect of design. So there were some things that I didn't actually enjoy doing, but I felt like I had to, because I'm a graphic designer. I should do everything. And so it really cleared my head, putting a list of stuff I didn't like doing. And then what I was able to do is just focus on the stuff I did like doing. And that gave me a bit more clarity in my business, as well as giving me clarity to tell people about it and what I did and the things I did and why I did it. So, and the thing is, those lists will look different for everyone. Some people might have it equally split. Some people might have just one and dislike, and then they love everything else. But sometimes it really helps you to see what you don't like, rather than saying, well, what do I do like?
Yeah.
True.
And you definitely, if you're doing a list like that, you don't want to make it about your girlfriend and leave it on the kitchen counter, because that goes very, very badly indeed. No, that doesn't happen. That's an episode of Friends. I would say this is going to be hard to demonstrate on the audio podcast if you're not watching the video. But I remember an old business mentor of mine drew this thing on a whiteboard, and he was saying everyone thinks it's a straight line. So you're at A, and B is basically the end goal of you being entirely happy and passionate about what you're doing. And everyone thinks it's just going to zoom from A to B. But invariably what happens is, and I'm going to demonstrate this with my hand, but I'll describe it for everyone listening. It's this kind of spiral thing, right? Where you're trying something out over here, and then it goes around, you try something else out, and it's sort of very, very slowly like just gravitating towards that center point over a very, very long period of time quite often. And some bits will kind of move towards the center quicker. Other times you might, fall out again, and it just kind of slowly goes in there. And it really stuck with me because it's so true. And rather than it being that quite short straight line, if you took that spiral line and like straightened it out, it would be pretty damn long. But that's natural, and that's pretty much life. And I think particularly because I'm very invested in like the entrepreneurial community, it's that whole thing of you have to be 100% happy what you're doing every minute of every day is kind of what's preached. And whilst I think that's probably not realistic, there's also something in me that aspires to that, where even if I'm 95% happy, I'm like, well, should I be doing something that makes me 100% happy? And so the truth is, Ali, like I just turned 30 today, and I'm still figuring that stuff out. But I'm going into my 30s feeling a lot more confident that I'm closer on that spiral. And for me, I've been thinking about this a lot recently because I love my company. I love what we do at Design Cuts, but I'm really getting to the heart of actually, it probably isn't design anymore for me. And my favorite thing in the world is building communities and just creating something cool and new.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm trying to gravitate more towards that with my actions. Like today, we started this cool WhatsApp group, and I spent 2 hours running around the office doing personal video messages, being like, "You're one of the first ones here," and like running around. We did a Mexican wave in the office, being like, "We're celebrating you here," for like an individual person who joined. That's the stuff which I love. But it took me years and years and years of trying loads of different stuff to start honing in and feeling really confident and being able to own that and be like, actually, that's me and that's what I love the most.
Yeah.
And I think whether it's business or design or whatever, that's quite a good thing to bear in mind, because you can't just zoom there. You have to try a bunch of stuff. You have to give it time.
Yep.
And it's like most people have awkward teenage years, right? You're not just going to like be 6 years old and be like, I fully know myself and I'm 100% confident in myself and my abilities. You have to figure it out. That's the journey, but that shouldn't stress you out.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
It took me till I was mid-30s to figure out what I actually like doing, and actually just figuring out myself. So I think, there's you can, and especially when you're that young and you're asking those questions, that you can get stuck in that sort of mental thing. I should have all this sorted, and it's like, actually, it goes, like Tom says, it goes in completely random directions, and there's been like doors that have shut, and at the time we're like, oh, I'm really gutted that's happened. And then I look back and I'm like, oh, if that hadn't shut, then I wouldn't have had this opportunity over here, which is 10 times better. So yeah, don't I think, sorry.
Yeah, you never know. You never know.
know.
I totally agree.
And your time you've got so much time when you're, even now, like, I'm nearly 40, I've still got so much time. I've still, not even halfway through my life. So, well, depending on how I do, but,
I was gonna say, you don't know that.
Well, you'd like to think.
But looking what I've done
yeah.
over the current 40 years, is like, if I've still got another 40, 50, maybe, in me, just how much I can do in that time. And then I suppose, for someone who's leaving college, sort of between 18 and 20, they just got so much time. So they can do the sort of, picking blueberries and just figuring out what they want to do. It's just, sometimes it's like, don't be afraid to be working at a cafe and trying to explore new design ideas, just trying to figure out what you want to do. It's better to be doing that than being in a job that you really hate, because it just really grinds you down.
Yeah.
So
The answer is to do, right? It's to do more.
do more. Yeah.
more,
And that's
try
why I
more.
advocate just posting on like Instagram, just because, and what we've seen with all the people doing the 100-day projects, and like what we've seen with Dustin and Lisa and stuff like that, is that you're doing stuff and you're trying stuff, and then suddenly you fall upon, oh, I've tried this, I know, certain brush or pen or something like that, and you're like, wow, I really love doing this. Or you pick up something, you're like, I would never have picked it up unless I'm been constantly putting some work out there. So yeah,
That kind of
Time.
leads me, I guess, to the other question. And it's not really necessarily applicable to me, but maybe we talked about my friends and like people I graduated with who are in jobs right now that maybe they do feel like, a computer monkey. And, like what like would you say to them? Like I feel like I can't really offer anything to them, but you guys, what would you say to them if they're not happy in what they're doing, but they're kind of stuck?
I would say to express themselves creatively on a side hustle, and to try and glean as much value as they can from the monotonous computer monkey work, where it might be boring, but they might be getting better at layouting. They might be surrounded by people doing less boring, more inspiring work that they can learn from, especially if they proactively go and try and get mentorship from those people and try and say, I really want to learn. Can you teach me? And I'm happy to keep doing the computer monkey work in the meantime. And then go and put all of that knowledge and experience they're gaining into something they're doing for fun on the side.
Yeah, definitely. And also I mean, I know it's a cliche, but they need to look at the good side of their job. And because there will be, as you said, there's insurance, there's stability. They're probably learning all the time and making mistakes on somebody else's budget. So that's the thing,
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So there are going to be pros to their situation. It is difficult when you're young and you want to express yourself creatively straight away. And as Tom said, you can find other ways to do that. And I think it's kind of like, I mean, I had those jobs, and I actually, looking back, don't regret them. And in fact, I think they were really important to my growth, because I quickly figured out those jobs quickly make you realize what you don't want to do, which is just as important as knowing what you do want to do. So, yeah, there's definitely benefits, and as you said too, with everything, it's the attitude. But I know that's easier said than done if you have to go to work every day unhappy, but yeah.
For me, I think it's obviously there's a dependence on whether, if you quit that job, money is the big issue. But I would, in the spare time that you do have, is create, like Tom said, a side hustle, which can be passive income. Is a really big thing that you could start, making products and selling products digitally, doing a bit of freelance, so that you can build up a buffer. What you're looking to do is build up enough money that you can then quit, or try and find another job, or quit, and then have a period of time where you're either, applying for jobs, or you're then you're spending more time on the thing that, on that hustle that you've been doing on the side, that you can then make a main thing. So it's sort of, it's just thinking, time in the future, if I put work in maybe every night or every week, that at a certain point I'll have maybe enough money, and then I can either quit or get another job, or put more of my energy into whatever the new thing is.
But complaining does nothing, right? If you're meeting up down the student bar or whatever, and they're like, oh, my job sucks, I sit there, it's really monotonous. That's different if they sit up and they're like, you know what, I've got a monotonous job, but it pays the bills right now. And every evening I'm spending 1 hour applying for cool companies like Design Cuts, plug. And I'm spending...
You're looking for more employees.
And I'm spending 2 hours putting my work out there, amassing a following, opening up opportunities for who knows what down the line. Like, there's such a big difference. I just hate when people sit around and moan.
Just because, like we've said on the program before, there's two avenues you need. There's, sometimes people just have the one brush. One is the money income, so it's just the thing that supplies, that pays the bills, and one which is your passion income. So you could think of it like that. So you have your passion outside of work, and you have the thing that's monotonous, but that's paying the money. Long as you have that area where the reason why you started designing, or the reason why you took it on, you're getting an outlet, and you just think that's, like Tom said, it's earning the money to pay the bills, but just think of it as in terms of, it's paying me to prepare this other business that I'm building, and that, say, in a year's time I'll be able to leave this part behind and concentrate just on that.
Mm-hmm.
And then still, even when you got there, so you need those tier areas. You need the thing that makes the money, pays the bills, and the thing that you really enjoy doing, that may pay the bills or may not pay the bills. But as long as you've got something that earns you some money, and I suppose for us, it's the passive income.
On that note, please don't leave us, Sally. We like working with you.
No, I was sitting here and I was just like, stop encouraging people to apply to Design Cuts. Like,
yeah, come gunning for your job.
Last week it was Tom's podcast. This way it's Design Cuts. We need to, Dusty, and Lisa need to shoehorn in our things.
Okay, Ali. So thank you so much for being on the show. First of all, it's been really refreshing, actually, to get a different perspective on things. So hopefully it will be for the listeners as well. Have you got a final comment you'd like to make? Final pearl of wisdom for the dear listeners? Put you really on the spot there.
Yeah, I know. I don't know how many pearls of wisdom I have. I guess what I would just say as just encouragement is that no matter how lost or doubtful you're feeling right now, if you're in the same situation that I'm in, it's going to be okay. You know, like we all love design and it is our work, but it isn't necessarily all of our lives. And that's okay, you know, and if it is your life, that's also okay. I think it's just really checking in with yourself and taking care of who you are, and whether or not that's your design self, that's okay too. But it's going to work out, and it worked out for me, you know, it's working out for me, and it will work out for you. You just kind of have to stick with it. And even if you don't want to stick with it and you want to leave it, then, you know, that'll be okay too. It's just, I guess this can be such a scary time. And I hear a lot of my friends and they sound like alone in the fact that they feel like they're alone. They feel like they're struggling and they see everybody else and everyone else isn't struggling. And everyone struggles. So, you know.
Yeah. We're all in the same boat.
So I guess just, you know, reach out for some design love from somebody, and, you know, someone's going to be there to give it to you. So.
Yep.
Yeah. Best community in the world. Design community. Thanks again, Allie.
Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. And
It was nice meeting you, Allie.
It was very nice to meet you guys and see you and Dustin, Tom.
In real life.
Yes,
Yeah,
that would be great.
hopefully we'll be seeing you soon when
Well,
you're UK side.
That's true. And I've recruited Tom to come to Creative South next year. So,
Oh, we were talking about this before
Yeah,
the
we were actually
podcast.
talking
I'll let
about
you know on that front.
yeah. But I'm sure everybody would love to meet you guys and see you in person in your 3D selves rather than just your 2D selves.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Allie.
Thank you.
Bye from all of us.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode. We hope that you enjoyed Allie's perspective on the design industry, and do let us know in the comments for this episode if you'd enjoy hearing more from young up-and-coming designers in the industry. As always, you can find full show notes over at honestdesigners.com, or find us over on iTunes by searching for The Honest Designers Show. If today's episode helped you, then it would mean the world to us if you took just a moment to leave us a quick review over on iTunes, as this is one of the best ways for other designers to discover the show. Thanks again for tuning in, and we will see you next week right here on The Honest Designers Show.